Hello, everyone. Welcome to another video here on the Blue Abroad YouTube channel. This will be one of a few conversations that I have with people in the Carlton content creator space, value providing space, we'll call it, about the Blues. We are sitting here mid-season, the break, the bye, sitting here 4-7, and I've got Adam with me, Mr. Carlton News and Stats. Hello.
Hello, mate. Good to see you.
Yeah. I was going to say, I didn't know if to say Adam or if I would say up the baggers, because usually I attribute people with their usernames and their tags. So, yeah, it's good to have you here, mate.
No, it's good to be here. I wish it was under better circumstances. As I was saying to you before we jumped on, when the game was on Saturday, it was like worst timing. You know, I normally have such like a positive, sunny side, glass half full outlook. I had someone DM me. I was like, what's going on? You're normally so glass half full, but very hard to be at the moment. I think Saturday was as frustrated as I can remember being, maybe under the Vossi tenure. Very, very frustrated.
Yeah, no, I can say that again. I just put together a compilation of just words and sentences that have been repeated since 2020, which is just crazy. Like, we seem to just be plugging and playing the same themes and issues, and then plugging and playing different names who are, relevant to those issues, whether it's, coach, players, executives, whatever. So, look, purpose of this is to be a little bit more high level, mid-season review. The facts are we're 4-7 at the end of round 11. We're going into the bye. What have you made of season 2025 so far?
I guess 2 weeks ago, my answer would have been a lot different. I think we've gotten, unfortunately, what would Vossi call it? The feedback that we've wanted the last 2 weeks or not wanted. Unfortunately, good sides are defined by what they bring and what they do to other teams. Bad sides are defined by what they give to other teams and what they do to themselves, and that's Carlton at the moment. They can't adjust to their weaknesses being targeted. Their weaknesses define their losses, and they just can't run out games or don't know how to adjust and execute when teams adjust to them. And either way, that points to, and you and I will obviously break this down throughout, but it points to either personnel or coaching or both, or a bigger problem at the club itself. So I guess we'll get through that. I'm more curious what you thought, particularly the last 2 weeks and where we sit.
I think, if I'm honest, after the first month, I developed a fear that the group had been mentally broken a little bit, just based on, that first loss to Richmond. You never want to overreact to one loss, but I just couldn't help but feel that was the 2019 to 2021 version of the club and the team. And I was very fearful that would be a bit of a sign of things to come, and the season looked over. And then I managed to find some optimism because they seemed to play with a little bit more of a flow. And we were hearing words to the effect of, honest conversations. And then eventually things seemed to start changing. The glaring issue for me is, I think the attitude and the approach to games and the focus levels within each game is a bit conditional. And I don't see an unconditional, relentless pursuit of excellence on the field for anywhere near long enough. And now I'm caught in this space where I'm like, were my expectations wrong from the outset? Because ultimately you can only really be upset if your expectations are not met. But at this stage, I've managed to move the goalpost even wider to, can we just be intensely competitive and relentless in the way that we play the game? And if we lose, we lose. And yeah, I saw scary things in the last game against the GWS Giants personally. So I'm at a loss for what is happening.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I sort of thought probably first 2 years of this group or this coaching group is that Carlton were really hard to play against. They would make you earn it. They would just beat the shit out of you if nothing else. and there was a physical brand that they brought that made them hard to play against. And I feel like that's completely flipped and they're no longer a hard team to play against. I mean, footy is a momentum game, so I never expect that you're going to dominate for 4 quarters, even in a game that you win. But and there was those momentum swings that we suffered with where we'd concede runs of 5 goals, something we all know well. But yeah, I have thought the same in that. Did the Brisbane game break this group a little bit? That's why I felt personally that the Adelaide games and the Sydney games were so important to get a really good win on the road. Adelaide, firstly, a venue we never win at, and a team that's become a bogey side. Sydney, just a venue we struggle at historically, and were proven wrong in the worst way in those games. And all you saw was the things you were concerned about. And it's I'll always pretty much strongly defend the club against, or the players against, criticism. Hard to do that at the moment. It's very well deserved. They just, they do certain parts of the game plan well. And if all goes well, they can win games. But if it bleeds out and they can't win contests and they get beaten around the ball, it falls apart from there because the pressure game no longer holds up because they get beaten on the outside. They can't get around. Like what the Giants did. They just went around the back time and again, went to the fat side of the ground time and again. And once they got out of space, what got out in space, it just fell apart. And so when you're built on certain things, and they're a really good defensive side, Carlton, they are a really good defensive side, but it's predicated on certain things holding together. And once that breaks down, they become an incredibly easy team to beat. We saw that in the 4th quarter. It was really hard to watch. And I don't know. And I think the scary part is I don't know how fixable Carlton's problems are in season. And no one will care if we get to 7-7 because we'll play Essendon, North and West Coast. So none of that will matter. It's the games that we've lost that we haven't been able to prove ourselves wrong and prove to our fans that we can play a brand that holds up against the best sides for long enough. And we've heard, and you just talked about those buzzwords and putting all those buzzwords together. And we've heard about getting that consistency to do things for long enough since the end of 2022, since the loss to Collingwood. So you have to ask hard questions on why that's happening. Is the club pulling all in the same direction, in the same pursuit of, like you said, in the pursuit of excellence and winning? And if it's not, where is it falling apart and where do they need to make ruthless change? Because I think the club is at that point where they cannot let the best parts of this list go by. I'm not really willing to hear an excuse about the list. I actually think the list is fine. So I think it's time to ask hard questions, and I'm sure the club's doing that. But there needs to be some transparency back to the fans now about how that's going to be addressed, because I think that fans are at the point where they're tired of hearing the same thing over and over, that same messaging. They just need a little bit more transparency.
Yeah, it's really difficult because, I mean, I think the beauty and the curse of 2023 is that they went on to do it and break through and go do something magical. And I don't believe that you can't fluke 10 weeks, 11 weeks. It's not a fluke. They found something. And I thought there was a bigger monkey to get off the back in 2023 than what there is now. Like back then it was, this group haven't even played finals, let alone win a final. So the beauty is, geez, they're capable of doing the unthinkable. And it's also the curse though, because I find myself holding on to this, what seems to be false hope again. Like, good clubs don't rely on magic like that, to win premierships. So, yeah. And then now I'm at this point. I mean, these players, I do believe they're good. Particularly, the 4 that are in the background here, I believe they're pretty good players. And I find myself asking, like, are they making choices out there? Like, who really? I mean, everyone's got an opinion on what the problem is. I do believe, and I think most of us will understand that there are probably a number of problems. Where do you lean into most if you had to make the best guess as to where it's really going wrong or gone wrong? Like, what do you think you would guess to be the number one area of concern?
On field?
Yeah. Or both. Yeah. I mean, maybe in general. Yeah.
Well, firstly, I don't think we're maximizing our stars. Unfortunately, you have to put and the onus also sits with them. Don't get me wrong. The players have ownership of that too. I think where there's a fair discussion around Jacob Wiedering and freeing him up in the back line. Now, I don't know. I did sort of think, and I don't have anything on this for the record. I do wonder if his knee is still troubling him with the sort of form we've seen the last couple of weeks, but I also think that's an easy get out when you front up. So here's an example of someone who's not being maximised, and it shouldn't simply be down to an absence of Jack Silvani. We know how important he's proved to be. Is Sam Walsh playing the ideal position right now for him? It's been a discussion. I think I sort of see just keeping Paddy Cripps healthy as the priority, so I sort of understand what's going on there. I think his footy's held up pretty well. Harry and Charlie have only really played together well in one game this year, which says to me that they're not. To me, it's not a discussion of one or the other, because we've seen them function well together. I think the main issue they're having is the efficiency going inside forward 50. So this has been broken down constantly on footy programs. First Crack have done a great job of it. Probably one of the only programs actually does a good job of this sort of thing. Is the kicking inside 50. It's just a lack of composure, which sometimes leads to bombing away from 80 metres or going really deep entries that are more likely going to result in double and triple teams. We don't know. One of the reasons Matty always moved on is because he did block for the big boys. He was always looking out for himself. And I love Matty always, but that was a problem. But the smalls don't help create for the bigs. So it's a bit of everything. But we also don't. I don't know whether it's a lack of good skill in the team or a lack of the game plan setting up the players in the right positions, because I think it is setting them up in the right positions and they're making the wrong decisions, because you see them break out into space or through the front of a stoppage and they'll bomb away rather than give the next handball and eat up some space, eat up 10 metres and get a better entry. They'll just go for metres and by foot, and it's really frustrating. So that for me, but that's been a problem since mid last year. So like we've turned into a really inefficient team in the back half of last year when we were 11-4, if I remember correctly, and that hasn't gotten better. So that's the biggest problem for me. That's an on-field issue.
Yeah. I think having seen what this group is capable of at their best, we'll call it a buzzword now, I guess, but the big one was connection. And there was that presence of connection and care for one another, even though it was only for half a season, or maybe if you count the first half of 2024. But it's very clear when they are trusting of one another, when they are looking to get each other involved, when they're looking to work for one another. I watch that break down pretty quickly. I watch it start well in games, relatively speaking. I watch that bit start well, and then once we get into the flow of a game, I just watch it fall away. And I mean, take the most recent game against the Giants. I watched that. I think maybe for the first 10 minutes it was good, and then it falls away pretty quickly. And so I'm left guessing that there's something happening on the inside. And, there've been challenges throughout the year with injured players, Newey and Jagger, bit of a gut check situation there. But, life happens and footy happens, and, some sad ones. I mean, I think Elijah and Harry for different reasons. Like I guess that's going to have an impact on the group because it's so new. It's quite unique to what we're seeing and what we have seen in the past. And yeah, I'm led to guess that I just don't know. Are they all 100% on the same page in there? And in fact, I'm pretty sure that they're not, but I just don't know why.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a breaking point for clubs, but the club, since probably the end of 2022 into 2023, they've wanted to embrace that expectation that comes with, Vossi talks about playing in the big games and things like that. So I don't think it would be bailing them out to use injury as an excuse. I think we all know how important Nick Newman is to triggering that back to front ball movement. But the team's still moving the ball well up the ground. It's just when they get within 70, 80 metres of goal, it's not happening. So they're third in the AFL for defensive 50 to forward 50 ball movement, fourth for D50 to score, fourth for D50 to forward 50. So the execution at the end of that's the problem. It would be nice to have Jagger Smith, but you can't be relying too heavily on a number 3 pick, no matter how good he is. I mean, Brisbane had far more injuries last year. They had 5 ACLs, I think. And, you were talking about 2023 And I think one thing we've been lured into when we struggle is, well, we've proved that we can overcome that before. And I think hope is not a strategy, ultimately. You can't rely on being the exception rather than the rule. You do have to take it a week at a time. But the position we're in now, we pretty much need to go, 9-3 the rest of the way, 9-4. It's a pretty tough position to be in. You have to ask, what's defining this lack of consistency year to year? Now, it's a very long season. All teams have lulls, but Carlton's are longer. And we're getting to a point in games now where we're not having game-defining quarters. Like, you remember last year, that third quarter against GWS, I was thinking about that during the game on the weekend, and I was thinking, we aren't having quarters like that this year where we really dominate and just beat up other teams and be physically imposing and dominant. And it does point to a couple of issues. One being we don't have the smalls in place. That is an issue that's always been a problem. But what you're seeing with teams like St Kilda and GWS, for example, is we don't have halfbacks that match up to modern footy. Those playmakers off halfback. So you have to try. I think they're going to have to try and manufacture that somehow, because that's probably something you can fix with an auxiliary player. I don't know. Like, you're not going to be able to pluck a. I'm curious to see what they do in the mid-season draft with the pick that they've got, but I don't know how solvable the smalls issue will be unless they get the ball movement right, going inside forward 50, which will help Harry and Charlie, and in turn, as always, the smalls.
Yeah. What's your hope levels compared to your? How do you support in terms of how do you compartmentalize your optimism and your belief and your hope? Like, how does it run in your mind?
I mean, I always see it as just footy, which helps. But that doesn't help at your highest frustration. At the end of the day, we support our footy clubs and our sports teams in general. It comes back to escapism. And when you're being this frustrated in what's supposed to be your personal escape, you can understand why fans get pretty upset. How you take that out is another thing. And I'm quite vocal about that, as you know. But my hope levels aren't too high, only because, you stack wins early in the year. Doing another 2023 is really hard to see. And the expectations of this group is not simply to scrape in finals again. I don't think if the club gets it together, has to travel to, say, Adelaide in the first weekend in the finals and have a repeat of last year, that's really for naught. So I think you have to start asking hard questions that are about this season and beyond. So, you and I have both seen Nick Newman looking in pretty good shape. Now, I've heard that he's a good chance to come back earlier than expected. But do you ask a question of how worthwhile that is this year? Whether, we've seen what Sam Doherty's been able to do in the VFL and help that group. You saw how badly they went without him on the weekend. How valuable it is having that mentorship in the VFL. Because I think our development program actually is coming along pretty nicely. I mean, you saw Harry Farrell and how promising he looked, but that's being rushed into action. My understanding is he was always more of a 2026 proposition. So, hope levels aren't high, but I think it does. Crisis creates opportunity. So my optimism levels in that aspect. So you ask questions. The club's already preparing either way for what happens with Tom De Koning as a list management team does. You start asking hard questions on what the shape of the list looks like. Do you want to start trying players in new positions? Now, Ollie Holland's played half forward for a stage on the weekend, which is what Pommy has spoken about for a while. I'm too on that train. I think we're missing a trick by playing him off half back rather than half forward. I think that's the way the game's moving. We're seeing how well a runner like Matty Cottrell, who has good foot skills and is smart, can do in a position like that. It's a more damaging area of the ground. So I'd start asking questions like that, because I think Vossi is going to have to find creative fixes to save the season. And primarily, we've not done that in the last few seasons. Players have been pretty fixed to their positions. Even swinging Mitch McGovern forward was a surprise on the weekend. It was something that worked relatively well for a little period of time. So those are the things you have to start looking at. And then off the field, they have to start asking themselves, are they doing absolutely everything they can in the pursuit of a premiership? Because that is all that will be acceptable for this generation of the list.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and that's where I always come back to. I mean, we've made the key investments in the core group of players that we believe are going to take us forward. or are going to be a part of that premiership team. And so I'm past the point of relying on the individuals. I mean, Tom's maybe another conversation. I mean, from where you see it, do you think he'll stay or go? Just on a side note.
I don't think he's decided. I don't think anyone. My understanding is no one actually knows what he's going to do at this stage. And I think his footy sort of resembles what Chad Warner did before he re-signed.
Yeah.
His footy the last couple of weeks doesn't seem to be as engaged as he was at the start of the season. I mean, it's just a crazy amount of money.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about $5 million difference. At minimum is what I understand as well, is that it's at least $5 million. And the Saints have capacity to up their offer. So, yeah, if I had to guess, I wouldn't blame him for taking the money. But, I mean, he toured Sydney during the bye when his last extension was up a couple of years ago and ended up staying. We thought he was gone then. So a lot of things can happen. So I think it's genuinely a coin flip at this stage. But it's just you have to consider it. If you're him, you have to. It's a life-changing, generational wealth amount of money.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah,
You?
I do. I think when it's all said and done, I think he'll stay. But I do think we will lose another one, and that might be next year.
Go on.
Or before then. I don't know. We have to lose one of them, I think. And I just don't know if we want to lose Tom, but you can find other mids. I'm mindful of Walshy at the moment, if I'm honest. And I love him so much, but I've never really seen him disengaged and having moments where he drops his focus like that. I've always looked at him as he just doesn't have that demon in the eye that I've been accustomed to seeing.
He's relentless. He's a relentless player. And yeah, I can understand you saying that disengagement. It's Tom Morris was talking on SEN this morning about Sydney being cashed up and could they go after a Charlie Kerner. My understanding is that they're actually, for the second year in a row, asking the question of Harry. So whether they'll try and pull him out of the club again like they did at the end of last year, I'm not too sure. I think moving one of the keys would be a mistake. And personally, it's so hard to find them. And I just don't think they're the problem. I actually think Harry's doing really well in that ruck role. It seems like he's grown to enjoy it much more than he did originally. And it gets him around the footy and allows him, and I think it works really well with Cripper doing the rucking so they can get mismatches going back forward. But the execution is the problem there. But it's interesting about Walshy. I've been trying to figure out where he might go, and it scares me to think that he would end up at a club that we hate, because those are the sorts of clubs that need a player like. Well, every club could use a player like Sam Walsh.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a real proposition for the first time to lose one of those big cashed up boys. I hope not. But yeah, if they have to get creative, one might tip out.
Well, it's the one thing I don't think I've experienced much of. I mean, a few seasons ago, we got rid of the guys who were, highly touted and for whatever reason didn't come on. The Dow O'Brien, Fisher, Petreski, Seaton types, and then last season we moved on the guys who would unfortunately just the injuries just kept stacking up. Marchie and Martin and Cunningham, and we're yet to see like a real big move. And so, look, I hope this conversation is completely void by the end of the year and something has happened and we'll look back on this and say, gee, I can't believe you guys were even entertaining these thoughts. But in this moment right now, it's just starting to seem like if things don't turn around, we have to be really serious and cutthroat.
It's never not been our choice, right? No one's ever tipped out that we've not allowed to leave. Yeah, this group's always they've come up together. I mean, when Paddy Cripps re-signed, that's something he said. He wanted to see it out. And I think everyone has that same hope. But
yeah, that's the romance of it all, isn't it? Your homegrown boys, you draft them, you go through the trials and tribulations together, and you come out the other end. It's just wild because there's rhetoric around. Okay, for example, trade Harry or trade one of these guys, and it's like, okay, well, this is supposed to be the prime of their careers. And because I remember at the start of their careers, it was, I just wait until these guys hit 27, 28. They're there now, and we're saying, okay, it's time to get a new pick who we can then say, oh, wait till this kid's 27, 28.
I think it's the romanticism of the unknown sometimes. It's like when you trade for draft picks, and you see this a lot in American sports. The idea of the draft pick is often better than the reality. It's really hard to find A graders, like legitimate A graders. And I just don't think when I've spoken to footy people, and you sort of learn this lesson, is you don't trade players at the bottom of their value, or when they're on the down, you trade them at the apex of their value. I don't see them trading anyone for salary cap reasons, because I find that the salary cap stuff is far overstated. The reason you sign players to long-term contracts is because you have the ability to move their money around. After next year, we have no one who has unmovable money, being by a free agent deal. Like one Zach Williams is out of contract. He's the last one with unmovable money. So we have tons of flexibility through the next half decade. So I think we're more likely to be aggressive, whether it's a Miles Bergman or something like that. I think regardless of what happens with Tom De Koning, they go, like, you got to remember there's the Will Hayward. When they tried to get Will Hayward, they weren't tipping someone out to do that with that 800 grand or so. So I'm more optimistic on someone coming in. But, someone might, there's every chance that a player will break the fans' hearts and make a decision that they just want to try something else. They've had enough, and for whatever reason, they want to move on. But the best thing apart from Walshy, the best thing about having those players under long-term contracts is where you can dictate that and get a fair value as a footy club. And that's why you do those long-term deals at the end of the day.
Yeah. What's it like running up, creating content every week, getting the articles together? What's it like? I mean, you've been doing it for a couple of years now. So what's the journey been like for you in that regard? What do you reflect on?
So it was 5 years, I think, last week.
Wow.
Which is kind of crazy. At times like this, I find it probably the last couple of weeks I found it the most disillusioning. I think online, and you know what Twitter's like in particular, Twitter or Facebook and things like that, it can get, the vitriol and stuff can get quite severe. I enjoy it. The people that you meet, I mean, wouldn't have met you without it. Pommy's a friend. Lots of other people in the Carlton community. That aspect is great. I mean, I'm reading all that stuff anyway, and I've only had one complaint from one outlet in the whole time that I've been doing it, and managed to develop relationships with others. It's been really an interesting opportunity, scratching that media itch again in a way. But yeah, at the moment, I'm just posting the videos, not bothering to do the transcription or anything, because I don't think people care as much at the moment, because it's all the stuff is quite negative. But yeah, it's a challenge when you're working full time, and then I'm doing my own stuff on my personal account and another sport. So sometimes it's like having 3 full-time jobs. You're doing it from when you get up until you go to sleep every day. As you know, it never really switches off. My wife doesn't always love it, but we work around it. She's happy it's the buy round. Yeah.
I have only recently seen how really in-depth you go with Manchester United. And we had a chat on, which one was it? I think it was the team show last week. And I was asking people, like, do you have a passion for another club in another sport that you'd give as much emotional investment as Carlton? And I can see, I mean, you are well and truly entrenched in the Manchester United global conversation. I mean, it's quite fascinating. So you've got United, who I'm sure we could do hours on United in this conversation. So you've got that happening. You've got Carlton happening. Two very passionate fan bases and pretty big teams in the context of their sports. What have you learned from Manchester United fans and Carlton fans? Like, what do you?
The last week has been very testing, Terry. Losing the Europa League final in that manner. Yeah, it's an interesting contrast between the two. I mean, as I said, it was as frustrated as I've been with Carlton on the weekend, in recent times anyway. Obviously, it's been a lot lower than this. And then United are, worst team of my lifetime. I love it. I love the participation. It's quite a unique thing. Twitter's like a sports bar in that aspect. It's a lot different. Australian fandom, footy fandom versus Manchester United. I think because in soccer we have more access to wages and things like that, and we embrace data a little bit more in soccer as well. And there's much more even balance in it, whereas I find it much more frustrating. We treat data like it's alien if you don't like it in footy. So I find it quite the reason I started Bagalytics was because of the resistance that I was getting on the main account. And then I decided a couple of weeks ago, I was like, I'm not separated anymore. It's too hard to do it during games. You're at games, you're flicking between both accounts on your phone, you're keeping coverage of all the stats on another page. It was just too much. So it is quite interesting. It's probably plain to see I get much more frustrated with Carlton fans. But that's also because I think because it's more local to me and I'm more connected to the club. I know some of the players and the staff at the club and things like that. Because you have personal relationships, you react differently. So I might sometimes feel like at times like, God, how are Carlton fans worse than Manchester United fans? It's because my relationship to it is different. So I think the heartache of the last decade for United just becoming mediocre or like everyone else. And I think United fans and Carlton fans both have the same entitlement based on previous success, and that's really hard to rationalize with when you're shit.
Yeah.
But it is a fascinating delineation between the two. Two historically great clubs. I feel incredibly fortunate in a way that I started watching footy in 1993 and didn't want to support Essendon, so I supported Carlton. The grand final was my first exposure to that when I was a kid. For some reason, I didn't. Maybe it was the colours because my favourite colour is blue. So things just worked out that way, and then I've sort of lucked into that as aspect. And English fans call me a glory hunter because I support a historically successful club. And I live literally, unless I lived in New Zealand, I couldn't live further from Manchester. But yeah, it's I love it. Don't get a lot of sleep. I'm glad that the season's over in that aspect. So no late nights for a few months now that I'm getting on in years and I'm getting older and I can't do the things that I used to, burn the candle at both ends. But yeah, I'm just as committed to one as I am to the other. People ask me, it's like, it's not a choice. Like Tan, my wife, she's like, sometimes she's like, why don't you just support a different team? I was like, you don't understand how it works. Like when I was grumpy after Saturday, she was like, you're going to be grumpy about this the whole weekend. And I was like, you know that like, I can't help this. Like I'll do my best to be distracted. Like we'll just go do something. But yeah, man, it's hard.
Yeah. I don't know how you do the constant writing back and forth on the platforms. I made a pretty clear decision internally in my mind that I would just let where I want to speak, I would just speak here on camera. Because I was finding early days, I mean, oftentimes which is quite unique, when you write something, the context of text is always missing. And so people can interpret you get 20 people to read one thing that you write and you might get 3 or 4 different interpretations of what you've written. So I think if camera, video, you get to see my facial expressions, my tone of voice, it just adds to the context of what I'm trying to say. And I mean, the internet's savage, we grew up on the internet. So I understand whether I agree with it or not, the internet is the internet. It's an extension of the world, and people get an opportunity to say whatever they want to the most extreme degree. And I mean, I've just put that in the basket of it's the internet. Like it's just a savage place, and the world is a savage place as well. So yeah, I mean, kudos to you because it's tough. And I mean, I know for me personally, I mean, when you upload the videos of the press conferences, for example, like I use them, I share the screen and
well, that's one of the reasons I kept doing it, because I was watching Blue Abroad and I was seeing you use them because I know it's easier that way. I was like, well, at least I'm getting that's good feedback. And when people ask where you get them from or something like that. And I found people are finding the videos really useful.
Yeah.
You don't have necessarily consent across the board to use them, but like Carlton have been really comfortable with me using the club's content and reposting it because not people always know where to access it. It's not like it's being done purely for profit purposes. It's just me reposting it on there for people who have it all in one place. And people get use out of that. So I've just kept going with the video content. And now, thanks to Carlton FC Blues, has been super helpful with shaving down the time on that. He's really helped me. Another friend that I've made, I completely understand why he's stayed anonymous compared to like how I used to be and I'm not now. It just, I don't know. I don't even know what my train of thought was there, but people get used to it. So anything that, like I was asked, I put a poll up yesterday. Do people like the transcription on top of the video, or do they just watch the video and not read anything? And then most people were like, I watch and read. And I was like, damn it, that means I have to do both still.
For me, it depends. So if I'm, for example, if I'm driving or if I'm in an Uber or if I'm, moving and I might have AirPods in, I like to have the transcript because I'm on the way to somewhere. But I think generally speaking for press conferences, I wait until the team show and then I share it from your page. I mean, I could do it from the club's website, but sometimes I want to pause. And as you know, like when you pause on the club's website, it sort of like rejigs the whole video. You got to refresh the page.
Yeah, their video player, the AFL video players are so annoying.
Yeah. So it definitely helps me. And I think also the other thing that I would say helps me when you do the updated who's out of contract list.
There's not many resources for that. I find it really strange that someone hasn't put together something like that. But sometimes you don't know. Like we don't get much word on when players have a player option or a club option on their contracts to extend, which is a more modern thing. Like I don't think many people knew that George Hewitt had a trigger until I think it was either Riley or Gal reported it. Same with Mitch McGovern. You just assume that they're out of contract. Like, why haven't they extended his contract? It's because he's rolling into next year. Like, as people have been like, why don't we offer George a 3-year deal? He's had back trouble. He's not had healthy seasons every year. He's been great value for a 4-year contract, but the club has to be prudent with its list management. He's earning, what is it, 200 grand less than the annual average. It's been one of the great free agent signings, actually. But I find those lists really useful. And if once you do them once, I just search for them later every time someone signs. And I'm able to update it because I have to keep so many lists otherwise.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah. No, look, much appreciated what you do. Before I let you go, what happens in the second half of the year? Like, how do you see it playing out?
Honestly, don't know. The next few weeks will be telling. I mean, I don't know what you've heard, and we don't really know. I think the club's getting better at clamping down on leaks, but when things go badly, the leaks always start up again. But it seems like they're backing Vossi in, and they're more likely to rearrange the coaching panel around him. Now, to my knowledge, I think Ash Hansen, Aaron Hamill are under contract. There might be a couple of others, but I'd expect a rejigging of that. I'd heard that they're going to bolster the list management around Nick Austin and his team there and go more in on that and player development, which is good. They should be utilizing soft cap spending and paying the tax if they have to. The club can afford to. They've got themselves in a position where they can afford to. But also they're voting soon at the AFL Commission on moving the head coach salary outside of the soft cap or a percentage of it, which would help a club like Carlton really invest more in their development. And I'm not sure what you think. I'm wondering how much they pivot on the game plan moving forward, or whether they do whether Graham Wright sort of conducts some sort of a review of his own without doing an official one. You'd have to worry for the future of Brad Lloyd, who survived the last review, but may not survive. I've heard a Brownlow medal winner has been tapped for a potential head of footy role moving forward. We'll see what happens there. But I'd expect some pretty sweeping changes. It was now being reported, Damien Barrett last night, Tom Morris this morning. I'd like to see players moved around a little bit, find out what we've got. Don't throw the kids in too soon. I know there's that temptation, but we've seen with, Ashton Moyer, Harry O'Farrell, Billy Wilson. There's a promising crop of players there. I'd just like to get a little bit more veteran support around them. We've seen when Will Hayes plays, they benefit. We've seen when Tim Doherty plays, they benefit. That's more of a priority to me. I think you either can solve that forward half connection, but over 12 months, they've sort of proved that they can't. So until otherwise, they're just going to have to prove us as doubters and critics wrong. I'd like to see them maximize players better. I don't know whether you consider moving Adam Chera or Sam Walsh permanently for the rest of the year to half back and trying to get some, like Walsh's ability to link up and run and carry might be really valuable with finding more outside spread. What about you? Like, would you like to see more give from the defensive system so it doesn't feel like we have 16 players constantly behind the ball, so the ball movement improves? What are you thinking?
I would like to see some changes in that regard, no doubt. I thought they had simplified the game plan for these players, and that's what the breakthrough was a few years ago. And it just seems like every time we're looking to develop the game plan or advance it into a more rigid system that's got extra layers to it, we fall apart and we have to strip it back and just go play on vibes, boys, So I would definitely like to see changes. I want to see them go down swinging. I mean, whether we contend this year, don't contend, play finals, don't play finals. It's a fucking duty in my mind. Like it's a duty to go out there and
a brand you can be proud of.
Yeah.
Back to the last couple of years where we were a bitch to play against. We beat teams up, made them earn it. That would be, I want to say that, like, obviously at a minimum, but I completely agree with what you're saying. Sorry to cut you off there, but that's exactly what popped into my head. You want the fans to, at the very least, and they front up. We have extraordinary crowd numbers considering our lack of success over the journey. It's a shame because we could be the biggest club in the country, but we aren't, and Collingwood have taken hold of that. They need to get back to playing a brand that makes them earn it, that has a spirit of, like, if you want to talk about connection, I want to say it. Like when there was, I wish I could remember the incident off the top of my head. There was something on the wing, I think, against Sydney, and no one flew the flag for the player involved. And that sort of spoke volumes to me, because we used to be like a hallmark, is there was this togetherness. And if it doesn't, once that, like, I think we've obviously been worked out in that if you get after contest and you restrict their ability to apply pressure, because we're good at getting first hands on the ball, like first possessions when I'm one in the AFL, but first possession to clearance, we're 17th. So teams have figured out if you can stop us getting it on the outside, they'll get it on the outside, because I think we're fourth worst at stopping other teams when they get first possession. It breaks down from there. So you've got to find something else. It's a really bruising brand of footy to play. Maybe that explains the injuries more than the strength and conditioning program ever did. The bruising brand of footy. So how can you pivot? How can you stop being so reliant on players like Zach Williams and Matthew Cottrell? Their absences shouldn't be felt as hard as they are. They're role players. But footy is an 18-man game these days. It's not just about your stars. And unfortunately, it's like the rule changes, 666 and the stand rule, have gone against how we've built our list. So yeah, like you said, sorry, I've completely cut you off and gone on a tangent, but
that's okay.
Yeah, you're right. I'd like to see changes too. I want to see, like, I would rather go down trying something new, or going down something that'll benefit us into the future, something we can build upon into next year. The way that Melbourne, I hate this because we shouldn't be in the position Melbourne were in at the start of the year that we now are. We're doing those same things, but we've been doing them for twice as long, and they've won 5 of their last 6. And I think our list is better than theirs. So yeah, let's give the fans something to front up and be proud of. Don't have them wanting to leave in the third quarter.
Yeah. Mate, fingers crossed. Thank you very much for your time today. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, sir. It's an honor. And thanks for everything you do. It's amazing to see you growing and thriving, able to do it full time. And proud to watch along and seeing everything you're doing, and just leading the way in the fan content community. Because you know how passionate I am about fan content with stuff I speak about with other fan content creators in other sports. And I think you're leading the way in that aspect and inspiring a lot of other people and enabling a lot of other people to do the same thing. It's really cool to see. You should be proud of what you built, and thanks for having me.
Appreciate it, mate. Go Blues.